fiscal.com.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to it. It is the Wednesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, and we are ready to go. You guys should you should strap in, because today is going to be fun. Today is going to be interesting to the extreme. We did this a little bit here. What I'm planning to do today, we did just a little bit last week, the week before, where we go back and listen to the legislators in their own words talk about some of the things that are affecting us and we are facing here in the state. And I had kind of a fun time. Doing that because, you know, it's easy for me to bloviate on and on and on about what my feelings are and what the things, but to hear stuff come out of the mouths of some of these legislators and to hear their answers is in some ways its own reward. Let's just put it that way. Some ways its own reward to be able to do it. So we're going to do I guess on YouTube, they'd call it a react video. So we're going to do a react show today where we're going to go through this week's Senate press availability for the Senate majority. And we're going to let them do the talking. We're going to let them talk about, you know, what the issues are. The beauty of this is that I get to interrupt them and throw my 2 cents in through it's kind of brutal. It really is kind of brutal to be able to do that. It's kind of powerful. And so I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to be starting that here in just a few minutes as we go through here, because there is so much to cover. And it's a wide range of different things, and you can just see it. Now, there seems to be a bit of panic and gamesmanship going on down in Juneau. And the latest turning of the page happened last night, or late yesterday, I guess I should say, when the governor sent out a letter yesterday to the chairs of the House and the Senate Finance Committee. And it's so great. This letter basically says, hey, we got issues, and here, let me put the political hand grenade back in your lap. Now we asked questions earlier about why would the legislature continue to bring back, the education bill without all the policy decisions that the governor wanted when the governor said he was going to veto it. And, there's, and part of the reason we asked was why. Well, and we kind of pontificated, here on the program, kind of pontificated that it was partially due to political maneuverings and shenanigans. They wanted to be able to score some political points, because tall man bad, and if they don't want him to have a win, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, the governor pulled what I consider to be an excellent end run around the play here. Yesterday, he sent this letter to the chairs of finance in both the House and the Senate, and it says, I'll just read it. Here's what it says: is in the following. Dear senators and representatives et al., as is long practice, the state budget is generally built on the most recent state revenue forecast published by the Department of Revenue. In fiscal year 24, Alaska North Slope oil prices averaged over $85 a barrel. In fiscal year 25, the budget was built on a projected oil price of $78 per barrel. In the 2025 spring forecast released a few weeks ago, the projected price of oil for FY26 is now projected at $68 per barrel. FYI for you folks out there, oil ANS is now at $65 a barrel. I just thought I'd throw that out there. This represents an approximate 20% drop in the price of one of our primary revenue sources, resulting in hundreds of millions of dollars less coming into the state treasury. Recent OPEC decisions to increase supply suggest that price may generally stay lower in the foreseeable future, or as we talked with Brad about yesterday, may drop right out the bottom. I mean, could be mid-50s, right? Given that precipitous drop in revenue, the state needs to adjust its spending and the budget accordingly. We should only be focused on the most critical items to preserve our reduced cash flows and liquid reserves in this lower price environment. Therefore, I formally withdraw all my budget requests to spend new money above the fiscal year 26 adjusted base budget, except for the following items: capitalization of the disaster relief fund and capitalization of the fire suppression fund. It said it's unclear where changes in federal funds to Alaska and future oil prices may land with regard to our budget, but the fiscal uncertainty compels us to make difficult decisions and separate our needs from our wants. Okay. So this passes the buck nicely right back to the legislature. No longer can they say, well, this is the governor's budget. And the governor said, you know what? Any of that extra stuff that was outside of what is basically the flatline budget and just the automatic adjustments, minus those two capitalization for disaster relief and fire, everything else, no, we shouldn't spend an extra dime on it. And so he's basically giving it to the legislature for them to rise or fall on. Now, they could, if they want to, they could put these things back in the budget and force him to challenge and veto his own originally own amendments. But again, he's kind of washed his hands of it to say, guys, hey, no money. What are you going to do? We got to, I just thought that was interesting. This was an interesting play by the governor yesterday. And again, maybe too little, too late. I mean, maybe the governor should have put together a budget that had all those cuts in it and we're going to get into that because that's part of the presser. We're going to get into that. So anyway, I just thought I wanted to start off with that because that was a good way to jump into the morning. All right. So let's do this. Let's again react to what the Senate majority said yesterday, and they start off with this jovial little. I find it interesting that there's like 6 people in the room, right? Outside of the Senate, you got the senators and their staff and everything else. And there's like 5 people in the room, maybe 6, and they're all reporters. There's no public members. This is, again, just another reminder as you watch this video. All this audio, by the way, courtesy of KTOO. I mean, they're providing a public service, but I'm required to tell you that it came from them. Thank you to them for doing that. But as you're watching the video, which is where this audio came from, where are the citizens? Well, they're nowhere to be found because they're too busy trying to make a living, right? That's what it is right there. All right, so we're going to start with this, and yeah, expect me to be stopping this on and off throughout the thing, and we've got, but we're going to get started here before we run out of time, because this presser is 20 minutes long, and so we're going to go through it, and we're going to take it piece by piece. We're going to stop. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to go through. Oh, coming up in hour 2, did I tell you that Robb Myers is going to be joining us? He's going to be joining us, and he's got some explaining to do. No, he's going to explain. Because we're going to talk about a lot of the things that are going to come up during this presser, but most importantly and most critically, we're going to talk about the fiscal plan for the state of Alaska, or lack thereof. All right. So let's get started. Here's the presser yesterday with Gary Stevens as the Senate president, welcoming everybody and getting things rolling. You got to hear it. So let's get started. Here we go.
The 106th day of the legislative session. Have with us today here Senator Giesel, Senator Wilkowski, Senator Stedman, Senator Keel, and myself, Stevens. As you well know, the Senate is currently in the midst of the operating budget on the floor. Tomorrow we'll go through any amendments through that process and then kick it over to the House. Finance team has been doing a great job crafting a balanced budget, trying to provide a buffer for next year's budget cycle. A lot of hard work, a lot of different questions. We got a couple of members of finance here. They've made a lot of progress, though. And we keep hearing next year is going to be even more difficult. So gird our loins for that. But I've asked Senator Stedman if he would provide some additional details from this week and what we can expect moving forward.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President. We are on schedule still for a balanced budget. The calendar has not slipped.
Balanced budget. Sorry. It's just all right.
The calendar has not slipped. So that is good news. We'll have the operating budget on the floor in final format after some amendments. And we'll hopefully have the conference committee full speed ahead next week. So everything's even keel, other than we've had some big expenditures come at us to try to deal with. Mainly some labor contracts that will have a substantial impact. We're probably looking somewhere south of 50 million. We're still working on the final numbers. There is some concern that some of the non-GF costs may roll back in. We have to take a look at, so we'll work through that. We're going to plan on facilitating those contracts in the budget process, which means it'll be tight squeezed for other things also, because we are going to continue on our course for a balanced budget for FY26.
Now, he mentions the employee contracts, and he says something about $50 million. Now, I'm trying to figure out how they're accounting for that and how they're running for it, because the minimum estimates that I heard early on were in the $100 million, mid-$100 million range for the new employee contracts. And then the new numbers that we heard thrown around late last week was, with this increase and some of the other things, it's probably going to be closer to 300 million. So he said 50 million or just south of 50 million. I guess I want to know how are you counting that? And so this is a question that I actually sent to Robb Myers last night, said, I've been listening to this and this is what they said and this is what I heard. And so hopefully Robb will have an answer for us today in hour 2 on how that's being accounted for and what the true cost is of some of this stuff. But soft selling it a little bit, $50 million, still saying that they have to put it in the budget and more. This is just the opening salvo, folks. This is just the opening salvo. And yes, this idea about a balanced budget and we're right on time. We're holding to the schedule, and I'm just like, the schedule is more important than getting our fiscal house in order. I'm trying to figure this out. I mean, I just want to. All right, we're going to continue here. We've got more coming up. Before we jump deeper into this, let's take a break and get things going on so we can clear the decks for the remainder of the hour. I'm going to try and talk about this as much as some of this stuff. This probably may take more than I should have probably started earlier, but I wanted to get that governor's letter out of the way because it was such a great play. All right, we'll be back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. Oh, this is gonna be so great. This is gonna be so great. I mean, I just, I want to know, how are they accounting for that? Brian said, have you heard of goat math and girl math? I mean, I don't know. Is it I don't know what new math they're figuring it out at. I mean, because again, with all the estimates saying between 1 and 300 million, and now they're like with an 11% increase, and a what was it, 250% increase on the on paying into the employees' medical. I can't imagine that $50 million mark. Again, I'm trying to figure out how they come up with the numbers. That's all I want to know. Somebody explain it to me. So again, I sent the message to Rob, and we'll see what he says. All right. Lisa Gary said, I saw that yesterday and fell out of my chair. I don't know if you're talking about the cost or what, but again, nobody was talking about the ultimate. That's the first time I've heard anybody say, we've known for 2 days that they've come to an employee contract agreement, but that was the first time I'd heard anybody talk about the actual fiscal note on what's going on. That's what it is. Jason said earlier when we first got started, Mike, we need to start to push for Mike Shower to run for governor. You've got to convince his bride. I'm just telling you right now. That's what you got to, that's what you got to talk about. You got to convince his bride to jump in on that. I won't even bring it up around him anymore because I got the glare. Excuse me. I got the glare. You know what I'm talking about, right? I got the glare. Like, don't you dare. So yeah, I'm not even going to do that. If you figure it out, let them know. Can we get by without them? Let's see. Anthony says they're accounting it with the same my head was in the microwave too long math that they used to quote unquote balance the budgets, apparently. Yeah, that's the thing. And Harold's talking about oil prices and the giveaways and everything else. I mean, Harold, you're preaching to the choir here, brother. We've already said that we agree that there's $400 or $500 million still left on the table that could be picked up here without any real danger. But again, my fear is, and tell me this, Harold. My fear is that if we get garnered another, let's say $500 million from the oil companies because of the oil taxation, let's say we change that. What do you think would happen? Do you think that they would do any better with that spending, or would they just spend it all? I'm wondering what your take is on that. What do you take? Yes. Oh no. Michelle is a big no. Oh, the look. Oh, not the glare. Yeah, no, the glare. True. Trust me, guys. It was like, don't you dare. I mean, she looked lovely while she did it, but don't even think about it, cowboy. Don't even think about it. All right. Let's get with the program. All right, let's do this here. Jumping back into it, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. All those you are listening on the podcast, just think of that as a nice little break before we dive back into this thing head first and make a holy, unholy mess. Let's get to it. Here we go. 8 seconds out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. If you're on the podcast, why don't you leave a review? There you go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yep, that's me. I'm a pain in your Michael Duke Show. Good morning, my friends. Thank you for coming on board and joining us. We're ready to continue. We're going over the Senate presser from this week from the Senate majority, and it was the recap. And so we're gonna get into some of these. There's some gems in here, folks. There is some gems in here. So Gary Stevens goes on to talk goes on to introduce Senator Jesse Keel, who, I mean, he's the king of lame jokes. He's a funny guy, but it's anyway. He continues on. So we'll kick things back off here in this press conference with Jesse Keel addressing the crowd of 5 people in the audience, all reporters. That's a mind shaker. Here we go.
Well, I think I don't know how even I am. This morning, I brought in 2 boxes of tissues to the office for the budget process. They're for me.
Yeah, because it's so painful. So painful.
The simple fact is that the state's financial picture is so tight right now that a number of the things that it would be in Alaskans' best interest to do, we're not going to have the funding to get them done.
I mean, that's the thing, right? So many things that they want to do would be in Alaska's best interest. It would be in Alaska best interest for you to let us spend all this money, but now we're out of money, so we can't do it. So I don't mean to beat on Jesse too much, but that just kind of rankled me
to get them done. And so I will just remind the public that the budget is a lengthy process, that there will be a conference committee that works out differences between the House and the Senate. We have some ways to go yet, but the budget that the Senate passes will balance, and it will not reflect a lot of what everybody is interested in getting done, but it will reflect the financial reality that Alaska's in.
Because everybody wants to get everything done. What he said is not everybody's going to get all their spending that they want, but it's going to reflect the reality. Well, it's about time. I mean, we've been waiting for that since 2013, when it actually reflected the reality instead of spending money out of all the right.
Thank you, Senator Keel. So last week, as I know you're well aware, we passed an education bill onto the governor. We don't know when he's going to sign it, if he's going to sign it, if he's going to veto it, and what his plans are. So we're waiting to hear what he plans to do. But one of the components was a conditional bill, Senate Bill 113. And House is moving forward on that bill as well, and intend to pass it hopefully this week, getting that onto the governor for a signature. But Senator Wielechowski, could you give us some thoughts on Senate Bill 113? Just quickly remind us how important it is.
Okay, so buckle up, Buttercup, because there's a bunch of, this is going to be like Pulitzer Prize winning fiction that's about to be laid down here. I'm just telling you right now. Pulitzer Prize-winning fiction laid down by Senator Bill Wielechowski on this new tax bill, which is he's calling the internet tax, which others are calling the Etsy tax or the Amazon tax. And even I found out some new stuff yesterday that just blowing my mind. All right, you ready? Here's Bill Wielechowski on SB 113, his new tax that's supposedly not a tax. It's just a corporate realignment. It has nothing. Don't worry, you won't pay anything.
Yeah, Senate Bill 113, also known, deals with apportionment of corporate income taxes. It is mostly to deal with modernization of our corporate income tax structure.
So it's not a tax, just deals with apportionment, and it's modernization. We just got to get with the times.
It was an idea originally proposed by the Dunleavy administration,
which is a lie. That's the second time he said that. The Mahoney, one of the previous, who was it? It was, I think it was, former Revenue Commissioner Lucinda Mahoney had discussed a tax at a forum once, but the governor never put it out. The governor never signed on to it. It was just one of the things that I think they were spitball. Anyway, he just keeps repeating this lie. Like, this is Dunleavy's deal. It's not mine.
It was an idea originally proposed by the Dunleavy administration, Commissioner Lucinda Mahoney, back in 2021 to the Fiscal Policy Working Group, proposed it and said that that was one of the ideas that the governor would support if it was passed by the legislature. I don't know if his position has changed or not since then. And this is something that 36 other states do. It's really simply a modernization. It does not increase. I know there's people out there touting this is a tax on Alaskans, a tax on consumers. It is absolutely not.
Except he doesn't seem to understand how taxes work. He doesn't understand how there's no business that's just eating a tax, right? There's no business that's like, oh, that 3% tax that we're paying. Oh, no, we'll go ahead and eat that. Don't worry about it. We won't raise your prices.
It does not change the tax structure. It does not raise taxes. In fact, on Alaskan businesses, it is very likely going to lower taxes on Alaskan businesses that deal in e-commerce. And
how is it going to?
It does not change the tax structure. It does not raise taxes. In fact, on Alaskan businesses, it is very likely going to lower taxes on Alaskan businesses that deal in e-commerce and could actually incentivize e-commerce businesses to come to Alaska. And much of the revenue that is generated from this bill will come from other states who are currently collecting the revenue that should be coming to Alaska. And so when you buy something over the internet, well, first of all, it addresses Netflix, Hulu, those sorts of companies, which currently, again, are paying this exact corporate income tax. And
so your Netflix and your Hulu, they're going up, baby. They're going up. And again, it's this amorphous. It could, it should, it would. It depends on where the state is incorporated. It depends on if they're paying taxes already to the other side. But again, the cost is going to be eaten. The cost is going to be driven up. Maybe we won't pay it directly. Maybe they'll just increase the costs again on whatever their service is down the road, and everybody in the country is going to help pay the Alaska tax. But I mean, your Hulu, your app, yep, oh yeah,
over the internet. Well, first of all, it addresses Netflix, Hulu, those sorts of companies, which currently, again, are paying this exact corporate income tax in 37 other states. But if you do purchase something, first of all, most of the small businesses that operate on Amazon or on Etsy are not C corporations, and they will not pay this tax. That's very important for people to remember. But second of all, what's happening now is right now, if you do purchase something and you do purchase it through a C corporation, then they're using our state-funded broadband, they're using our state-funded airports, our state-funded marine highway system, our state-funded airports and ports, and our state-funded roads, our state-funded court system, and they're paying nothing. In fact, they're probably paying a tax to California or to Washington or some other state.
So there it is right there, folks. Free rides die hard, baby. Now it's time for you to pay your fair share. I mean, acting like these people don't pay for freight. They don't pay fuel surcharges. They don't pay express delivery fees. They don't pay the airlines. They don't pay none of that stuff. They're getting it for free. They're getting it for free because they're using all of the things that state-funded broadband. Well, I don't get any state-funded broadband. What are you talking about? I pay for all my... I mean, you cannot... Wow.
Then they're using our state-funded broadband. They're using our state-funded airports, our state-funded marine highway system, our state-funded airports and ports, and our state-funded roads, our state-funded court system, and they're paying nothing. In fact, they're probably paying a tax to California or to Washington or some other state. And so Alaskan brick and mortar businesses are picking up the cost for that. Alaskans are picking up the cost for that, and that's not fair. And so this is about parity also.
It's not fair. They're not paying anything except all the stuff they are paying. I mean, have you seen the fuel surcharge on freight lately? Do you think Amazon is not paying for freight? Do you think they're not paying to use the airports or the facility? I mean, they built an Amazon warehouse in Anchorage. I mean, do you think that they're not contributing? Oh, this is about... Don't worry, it's not a tax. State-funded broadband. Just
we're going to start with Becky.
So just get away from me. Then Becky Borer comes in and asks questions about the 75-25 dividend, which the Senate had promised, and now they're not going to be able to do it. And this is the response from Senator Stedman.
Becky, to answer your question, the Finance Committee has targeted 75-25, and I think the Senate for several years. And that would be the split from this changing the statutory formula. We've had an unprecedented expansion in our oil basin, which has led to billions of dollars in expenditures coming against the revenue stream, which has pushed down our revenue. Then we've had declining oil prices and other headwinds that we're dealing with. So this year we were forced to balance a budget with less than a 25% dividend. We also had serious concerns on school funding that needed to be addressed. So the dividend portion this year will be $1,000 per person. I hope that's not anyway permanent, that we get through these next couple of years financially and we get the ship kind of turned around and we get some...
But no promises. You notice, no promises. I hope it's not permanent. I hope it's not permanent like we haven't had the permanent fund.
And we get some flexibility in our expenditures to not only deal with increased dividends, but also increased capital budget to help us push back on our deferred maintenance and other things. But there is a limited amount of funds. So we have to stay within the reoccurring revenue. The fallback of going into the CBR looks to me to be very dangerous. There's only about $3 billion in there. And if the headwinds continue the way they appear to be the last couple months, we could walk through that little bit of money in no time at all. So we're saving that for a rainier day than there is today. So I think there's a lot of
saving it for a rainier day than today. I mean, you know, it's like monsoon season outside, but we're looking for a rainier day.
So I think there's a lot of elected officials that have not given up on the 75-25 split. And we will see what the future brings.
They haven't given up on the set. They only just moved to the 75-25. That was your entire fiscal plan.
Okay, thank you, Senator Stedman.
Oh, and then Senator Stevens. Senator Stevens. His response. Wait till you get to the end of this.
Okay, thank you, Senator Stedman. Thanks, Becky, for your question. We'll go on to our next questioner.
Mark Sabatini, Juneau Empire.
My bad. He wasn't answering her question. He answers Mark Sabatini's question. Do I have enough time? I don't have enough time to get to this. I'll just play Mark Sabatini's question, which is a loaded question. Full sale here, full send. It's a loaded question. Let's see how they answer it. This is Mark Sabatini.
Follow up, I guess, for you as well, Senator Stedman, which is the $1,000 dividend prompted some fairly predictable reactions and comments from folks going, "You're stealing $2,800 of my money. Find another way to make this work."
The derisiveness of that, predictable responses of "You're stealing my money." Sabatini's a good writer, but man, it's just so obvious he wears his heart on his sleeve.
The $1,000 dividend prompted some fairly predictable reactions and comments from folks going, "You're stealing $2,800 of my money. Find another way to make this work." And so I'm hoping you can spell out, take a scenario where you've got your $12 billion budget. You don't tap the CBR and using discretionary funds only. Tell me how you construct a budget that provides a full PFD and doesn't tap the CBR. What would you have to do, cut, or otherwise adjust to make that happen?
Well,
what would you say? I mean, this is the impossible Kobayashi Maru scenario, right? How would you make this work? If you had to do all this, no CBR, no cuts, how would you make this work? I mean, it's a setup question. But they still don't get it. Anyway, it's this predictable response of the town who's stolen our dividend. Those plebes are asking the question of the house drama. Oh, this is so much fun right now. I'm having so much fun. We're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
Okay. This stuff, you cannot, just the comment, the disdain in Sabatini's voice on this is so great. I mean, because you could just hear it, right?
Follow up, I guess, for you as well. The $1,000 dividend prompted some fairly predictable reactions.
The predictable reactions. Some fairly predictable you can hear the eye roll, on this.
The $1,000 dividend prompted some fairly predictable reactions and comments from folks going, "You're stealing $2,800 of my money. Find another way to make this work." And so I'm hoping you can
find another. And you know what? I think Zach Fields may have struck a little early on this because his new House bill has come out, which would lock the PFD at $1,000 and then means test it. And from what I'm seeing right now, people are losing their mind on the internet and everywhere else. I'm not seeing the response that I think many of the politicians expected. I'm sure that there's a bunch of folks out there who would be happy with that. I mean, see all the folks in Anchorage who are like, "Yeah, tax me harder, daddy." I'm sure that there's that out there, but no, there's been a huge amount of pushback on this, on his new House Bill 209. Yeah, House Judiciary heard it, and you can send an email to them. It's only by invitation only to call until Monday. Yeah, look, guys, you don't have to have an invitation to send an email to your legislator and say you strongly and vehemently oppose HB 209. There's no two ways about it, right? There's just no. There's just no. All right, I got to get this queued up again because I was monkeying around.
CBR. What would you have to do?
Happen?
Well, that's like asking.
Okay, so all right, what would you have to do to get that to happen? All right, and then Stedman is going to respond. to this. Man, I should have started this early. I'm only about a halfway through this thing. And we've got about 15 minutes left. Oh, man. Anyway. It'll be good. And Randy, God love you. You could have sent me that check. I could have really used it, Randy. You could have considered it an investment in the show, right? I mean, you could have considered it an investment, but he already sent his uncashed PFD check back to the state but I got to respect Randy. At least he stands on his beliefs. He does, he does what he believes. I don't think it's right. I don't think it makes sense, but it's his money. It is his money. That's one thing we don't agree on, but he doesn't think it's his money. He thinks he has to send it back to the state. It's not his money. I mean, it is his money. So he is allowed to do whatever he wants with it. If he wanted to set it on fire and smoke it like a left-handed cigarette, he could do whatever he wanted to do. But I mean, he sends it back. Good for him. Good for him. I mean, I think it's silly, but since it's his money, I got nothing to say on that. I mean, I just said a bunch of stuff, but I got no say in what he does in that regard. At least he stands by his principles. That's the thing. Good morning, Greg. Thanks for coming in. We're getting ready to continue this. And Randy's already a member of the Common Sense Corps. So yeah, he says I don't need the money because he already helped support by going to the Corps. Which reminds me, how many of you have joined the Corps? Huh? I'm just asking. Just asking. It's only a couple bucks a month. You could help out. If I had 100 people doing a couple bucks a month, that would be, enough for beer or coffee. I'm sure it's coffee this early in the morning. It's coffee. It has nothing to do with beer. Don't worry about it. It's not beer at all. That Anthony just said, that audio clip is making me physically nauseous. The snot suck swallow noise the dude is making directly to the mic is intense. That's just him asking the question, man. Don't be that way.
The $1,000 dividend prompted some fairly predictable reactions and comments from folks going, "You're stealing $2,800 of my money. Find another way to make this work." And so I'm
come on, it's not. You didn't really make a snot, but just Greg says, had to search for the show this morning. Kind of strange. Good thing Brian Cherry shared it. Yeah, this is why you should like and share the show. Like and share. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. We're so running. We're going to run behind this morning. I can tell it. I can tell you this morning for sure. But we're going through a recap of the Senate press availability for the Senate majority. And it is entertaining, to say the least. So Mark Sabatini from the Juneau Empire loads up this question, which is just a loaded question about, people are complaining that you've taken their dividend and you've stolen 2,800. So how do you balance the whole state on how do you do it? How do you balance everything without new taxes or taking the PFD? And Senator Stedman responds.
Well, that's like asking the captain of the Titanic, what are you going to do after you ran into the iceberg? You got bilge pumps, turn them on, you're not going to save that ship no matter what. So under your scenario, the ship sinks. The scenario that we want to go down is looking ahead and steer away from the iceberg.
Too late to steer away from the iceberg? To steer away from the ice. Hello, $1.5 billion deficit, but we're going to steer away from that iceberg. Don't worry about it. And we just added another $185 million last week That wasn't actually us putting our hand on the throttle and increasing the throttle towards the iceberg. We're steering away from it.
Quick follow. I guess what I was trying to illustrate is I don't know what's discretionary, what you can cut. If you can provide examples of, we'd have to, eliminate the entire Department of Education or whatever. But has any scenario ever been constructed of here's how we could cut $2 billion out of the budget?
So again, Sabatini is like trying to set up this question. I mean, you could just, his bias is oozing out of his pores on this one. Again, good writer, but obviously you got to know what you're getting there.
Well, I think $2 billion of general funds out of 4.5 or 4.8 is rather daunting, if not impossible. So I'm hoping that after we deliver the FY26 budget to the governor and he implements it, that he instructs his team in preparation for the FY27 budget to look at programs that we can eliminate, that we could get political support within the legislature to shrink.
Now, the governor did this. Do you remember 2018, 2019, when the governor put together a budget that had a bunch of cuts in it and eliminated a bunch of, do you remember that? Does anybody, Pepperidge Farm remembers?
That he instructs his team in preparation for the FY27 budget to look at programs that we can eliminate, that we could get political support within the legislature to shrink the expenditure side, because the revenue side is going to be contracted next year, and some of the flexibility that we're using this year won't be available next year.
So again, doing exactly what the governor did in 2018 that everybody, wanted. It's draconian. The world is burning. And it's this. So again, passing the buck back to the governor, even though he did that with the help of Donna Ardwin, who then later got fired because she was too honest, I guess. Right. And all this. And now they're like, oh, we hope the governor provides us with a budget. He did. He did. Well, but no, now he's got to provide it for it because we don't want to be responsible for this. Oh, God. Then Gary Stevens gets involved in this as well.
And it would be, in my chief executive.
Blah, 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 blah.
And that's not going to happen.
Okay, here we go.
So this is an amazingly difficult situation we are in, and we're asking pretty much impossible things of our finance committee. We know that we've got oil prices going down. It could be somewhere in the mid 60s, possibly, or more. We know that we have contracts that we knew we were coming. They were coming. We didn't know how much it would be. Possibly within the $45 or more million range. We know that the federal government may be cutting. We understand they may be cutting up to 5%, maybe more. So there's just a lot of unknowns right now, Mark. I think we simply can't ask those questions at this time.
We a lot of unknowns. We just simply can't ask that question.
We simply can't ask those questions at this time.
We just simply can't ask those questions at this time. We simply can't. Those are not questions we should ask. What? We simply can't ask those. We
simply can't ask those questions at this time. Senator Stedman. Well, the Senate President listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena.
Folks, you can't make this stuff up. The Senate President just laid out all these problems we're about there. But I don't want the public to focus on that. Did you hear that? Let me play that again.
Of headwinds.
Let me play it from the very beginning.
Senator Stedman. Well, the Senate President listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena.
What? I don't want the public to focus too much in that arena, because pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Let's focus on this year. We're not going to focus on the future because the future will right itself. So pay no attention to that. This I mean, what? You just, I don't want the, over here, squirrel. I mean, this is what the
of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them. I'd like to have the focus on the FY26 budget and the recognition that next year might be tougher.
Okay. We see them coming. Don't worry. We've got this. We see it coming. Guys. They didn't see it coming for the last 5 years. 5 years. The governor's 10-year forecast has said, hello, the bridge is out ahead. The bridge is out. You may want to pull back on the brakes. The bridge is, is anybody there? That they for 5 years, but don't worry, we got this. I don't want you to focus on what's happening in the future. Just focus on right now. Focus on you. Yeah, just focus on now.
I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena. We see them coming. We're going to try to deal with them. I'd like to have the focus on the FY26 budget and the recognition that next year might be tougher. And we'll find out when we convene in January. But all expectations are that oil prices will be less than $68 is what we're using in our forecast. You'll see that the budget is looking more in the 64 range. I think the future price is now around 60. We don't know. And that each dollar is about 35, 40 million. We don't know what the oil price is going to be at that far out. But we are recognizing there's a substantially higher probability they'll be in the low 60s than in the high 70s by far.
Okay, I can't right now. I'm running out of time.
Senators.
Mr. President,
I'm looking for the James.
I want to ask about the FY.
There's so many good questions. You guys should go back and listen to this. It'll blow your mind.
Ask both you and Senator Stedman. The constitutional amendment.
No.
Sean McGuire, Anchorage. U.S. News and World.
Okay, all right. So this is the final question. I got less than 60 seconds. This is James Brooks at the ADN. We're not going to get into the answer on this until probably next segment before we jump in with Rob, but here you go.
U.S. News and World Report released its ranking of states looking at education, healthcare, crime, fiscal stuff. And Alaska came out as the second worst state in the country to live in, work in, move to. And I'm curious if you all think Alaska is the second worst, ahead of only Louisiana.
we gotta go. We're gonna go. We're gonna be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. And I mean, of course, what are they going to answer to that? I mean, they were a little bit floored by that, by the way. They were a little floored by that. Let's see. I see Rob in the chat room, but Rob is not in the green room yet. Make sure. He said, let's try that. Try that one. Apparently, it's been long enough that the link changed here a little bit ago there, Rob. So maybe it's since the last time you came on. So what happens when you don't come on very often? All right. We'll see if we can get Rob in the chat room. There he is. He's popping in right now. But I mean, come on. This is a great question. Don't pay attention. We don't want you focusing on the future. Don't focus on that. But this question from James Brooks is just so good.
James?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a Jeff Landfield-like, very broad picture question.
Is it catching out there?
U.S. News and World Report released its ranking of states looking at education, healthcare, crime, fiscal stuff, and Alaska came out as the second worst state in the country to live in, work in, move to. And I'm curious if you all think Alaska is the second worst, ahead of only Louisiana.
Well, James, we are still here, and we choose to be here, and we can leave at any time, I suppose.
That's Gary Stevens, who's about to leave to Hawaii when he retires, because that's where he spends most of his time, is in their place in Hawaii, apparently. So I mean, we can leave it in time. We choose to live here until our retirement's all squared away, and then we choose to leave.
Well, James, we are still here, and we choose to be here, and we can leave at any time, I suppose. I don't know. Anybody had a response to that question, Senator Stedman?
Well, I could tell you one of the best places to live in that's Southeast Alaska, and I'd like to know if there's any place else on the planet that's even like it.
No,
so I'd say it's one of the best places to live.
No, there's not a place like it for a variety of reasons, some of which you're alluding to, others of which you are just, the fiscal stuff. Yeah, Ben Carpenter just said the fiscal stuff. Yeah. Like fiscal stability, like why would businesses want to move here? I mean, it's the second worst place in the nation. Why would they want to move here? Guys, there is so much in this presser that we didn't get to. I thought, it'll be fine. 45 minutes, no big deal. It's only 24 minutes of audio. Maybe we have to do an after show this morning to get back to it. I don't know. Let's check in with Rob. Let me minimize this. Let me check in with Rob real quick, make sure audio and everything else, since he had a problem getting on this morning. And we'll see. Hey, how are you doing there?
Hey, Michael. Good morning. You're pretty choppy. I don't know if I'm going to have to cut out and come back in on my phone or something. So
no, you're
kind
smooth.
of been evening out the last minute or so, but we'll see.
Yeah, you're smooth as butter for me. So we won't let you. I'm not going to let you go. So it's just sit right there. Hey, you got a helper there today.
I do. My daughter flew down over the weekend. Ever since I started running for office, she's been interested in politics. And so she flew down over the weekend. She's going to hang out until the end of session. Give her a chance to see it up close and personal.
Oh, that's like, why would you subject your child to that? I was just asking, why would you subject your child to that? I think I need to call OCS right now. I'm just saying. All right.
She's telling me she's enjoying it so far. So
okay, all right. Well, I guess as long as it's all good, it's all good. Well, brother, I mean, you've been watching this madness this morning, this press conference. I mean, you're sitting in the back of the room, part of the minority, really a minority of the minority, because you're the only one that I've seen that has voted pretty much with fiscal sanity the entire time. When you watch these press conferences, don't answer. I'm going to ask this question when we get back, because I want to start with that. Dude, you've given me a new mission here. The Senate has given me a new mission here. I'm going to be picking apart these press conferences every week from now on. I'm going to spend an entire show after the presser going through this. This is like the third or fourth time I've listened to the whole thing all the way through. And my mind gets blown more and more. I pick more and more out of it. But just this idea of to pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I want to talk with you about all this. All right. So anyway, we've tested the audio. There's just a bit of a delay from when I ask you a question, but hopefully it'll solidify. And we'll get back to you. Sound great. So we'll get back to you here in a second. I'm putting you back. Nobody puts baby in the corner. I just put Rob back in the green room. Nobody puts baby in the green room. All right. Folks, you've got to laugh, because if not, you'll burst out laughing or you'll vote from the rooftops. One of the two. I don't know which one, but it'll be amazing. Here we go. We're going to jump back into it. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Brian says, I asked that same question. Why am I still here? You're a glutton for punishment, Brian. That's why. Back with more.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show in a world. The bunnies just went crazy. It's Wednesday, and we just finished up. We didn't finish with everything. We're probably going to do a little bit of an after show today on the program, which you can find on Facebook or YouTube if you want to join over there after the show is broadcast on the radio, because we didn't finish the presser. But this is going to be something I'm going to do every week. I'm having way too much fun with them using their own words and being able to pick it. I mean, it's precious. It's so amazing. But we're about to jump into it with Robb Myers, senator from North Pole, who is in the minority. And I was just saying to him a second ago, he's in the minority, because he seems to be, he seems to be the only guy that's voting with real, true conservative fiscal discipline in mind. I mean, he was the sole vote against this last education bill. Like, whoa, wait a second, folks. How do we pay? He was the sole vote in the Senate against. And so we're gonna visit with him and find out more. But I know he was listening to this last. I know he was listening because reasons. He was in the chat room commenting with some of this stuff. So let's get started here and see what he has to say. State Senator Robb Myers joins us right now, hopefully with very little delay. Good morning, Robb. How you doing?
Hey, Michael. How you doing?
Good. Things better for you on your end now?
I think so. I'm kind of jerry-rigging a couple of connections here to make it work, but it's technology. You do what you do.
I see you got a backup just in case, so it's all good. So, Robb, first things first, let's just ask the question that I started to ask before I stopped myself in the break. So you've been listening to all that. What is on your mind as you watch these pressers and some of the things that come out of these folks' mouth? Like, we don't want people to focus on the fiscal future. Just focus on this year. Don't focus on the fiscal future. And we shouldn't ask those questions. And I mean, just all these things that come out of these folks. This is not a tax. As you watch this, give me your state of mind, my friend. I know you got to work with these people. I don't want you to besmirch anybody, but at the same time, what are you thinking? What are you thinking as you look at this?
I told you so.
It doesn't feel nearly as good, right? I said this yesterday. I said this yesterday.
This is a situation where
it doesn't feel nearly as good
something like this was coming. It was just a question of when. You can't predict the when so much because you don't know what's going on with oil prices and the stock market and stuff like that. But we knew the way that our state is set up, we knew this was coming at some point.
Yeah, no, I mean, I said it yesterday. You know, when you see the bridges out and you know it, and you could say I told you so, unless you're sitting in train car number 2 and then you're just suffering along with everybody else, and that's where we feel like right now. I told you so, but it's not nearly as satisfying as if you were sitting outside the train when it happened. And that's the thing. It's like all of a sudden, oh, we've got to steer away from the iceberg. We hit the iceberg, man. Are you kidding me?
Oh, we hit the iceberg 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We're just not willing to admit it.
Right. I mean, the minute that we started drawing billions of dollars out of the CBR to balance, quote unquote, balance the budget, was the day we hit the iceberg, because we weren't willing to address the fact that we were living beyond our means. That was the day we hit the iceberg.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we're not just spending beyond our means, but spending beyond what could be the means in the future. Because, you know, this is a large part of our problem is we talk about a balanced budget. What we do is we end up balancing a budget for 1 year, and then we ignore the fact that it's going to continue, that, you know, things go up and down. We ignore the fact that our revenue sources are extremely unstable, and we should be balancing our budget not on how much money we're getting this year, but on how much money we can get over the long run and put it on the low end. And we've refused to do that because we want to spend money around here.
Right. Well, that's the main problem, is that it's an unever-ending appetite for spending, right? I mean, they've never seen a dollar that they didn't want to spend. I mean, I see Rob just seems to have lost his audio. You're okay. You're okay, Rob. You're okay. I can hear you. I can still hear you. But I mean, we have this unenviable appetite for spending going on, and we just don't know how to stop that. We have no idea how to stop that. No,
we don't. We keep spending, and you know, we can't figure out how to stop. And you know, that is kind of the big question for us: is what is going to be the pressure that we finally respond to that makes us stop spending? You know, and you know, you and I have talked about this a couple of times already this year. You know, is what's going to make us stop spending when we finally hit rock bottom? When we finally actually run out of everything, once the permanent fund is gone or close to it. You know, when we finally get to the point where we realize, hey, we're spending, you know, a couple $2 billion more than we actually have. Because I mean, that's the direction we're headed. You know, we talk about the permanent fund, and I think you may have heard a comment on the presser yesterday, or maybe there might have been a comment from a presser a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember which, but where they said, yeah, we're looking at, you know, potentially being $500 million in the hole next year. And that's after already adjusting the dividend down to 1,000 and, you know, et cetera, all the things that they've done this year. They're like, yeah, it's going to get worse. And so the question is, what happens then? Well, okay, let's say we end up $500 million in the hole next year. Okay. $1,000 dividend is only 680 million ish. So, you know, if we keep going down this road, we're just going to cut the dividend again. And, you know, they kind of alluded to the fact in the press conference yesterday, we think we cut this year everything that we can. We don't think we're going to be able to cut much more next year. So assume it's just going to be the dividend. That dividend goes from 680,000 or 680 million, drops down to 180 million. You know, what's that work out to on a per person basis? It's like, you know, $200. We're hitting the end of the track here. You know, as you know, I've talked about for a long time. We know the bridge is out. We know we're hitting we know the end of the track is up there somewhere. And that's why we should have put the brakes on years ago. But now we're actually seeing the end of the track. And because we know that we're going to be in this position for potentially 3-4 years before we start to pull out of it. So Yeah, this is not pretty.
Pull out of it. You're awfully optimistic at this point, because and really when we talk about hitting the bottom, hitting rock bottom, because that's what it takes for an addict to usually acknowledge that there is actually a problem. We're close, Rob. I mean, if the PFD, if they're $500 million in the hole, and does that account for the new employee contracts? Does that account for everything else? I mean, it could be upwards of that nearly 700 million that you talk about for the dividend. So game this out. Next year, they say, boy, we just can't afford any dividend this year, because, I mean, they're already warning about how bad next year is going to be. They're setting it up to be able to say, hey, we warned you last year. It's just too big. So they take all of the dividend, and then all that's left, the only pot of money left to draw from, is the CBR. And that's a 1 year, really a 1 year take, because there's only about 1.8 billion in spendables in this. There's 2.8 total, but they got to have like $1 billion for cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. There's only just less than $2 billion. So we are at the very end at this point. There's really no other way they can make more money appear out of thin air. We're a couple of years away from hitting rock bottom. Am I wrong?
No, you are absolutely right. You mentioned the employee contracts. So the one big contract that we were all waiting on was the GGU, and that's the largest one. That negotiating unit covers almost half the state employees. That's mostly like office workers and stuff.
Right, like 8,500
and that one came
employees.
through just late last week. Right. Yeah, exactly. And so that came through just late last week. The question is, are we going to include it in the budget today on the floor? Because initially Senate Finance gave them a deadline and said, you have to have your contract negotiated and finalized by April 25th, or we're not going to accept it. You're going to have to wait till next year. Well, they just gave it to us Thursday, so May 1st. So almost a week after the deadline. And so the question is, are we going to accept that on the floor today when we're doing budget amendments? Most likely somebody's going to offer it. Whether or not it passes, I don't know at this point. So they've said that one is estimating $35 million for adding to this year's budget. And honestly, that's a lot lower than we thought it was going to be. And it sounds like it's a combination of a couple of things. One is they actually did negotiate a lot lower. You were talking about, like the increases in the medical costs and things like that. We were expecting some of that. The surprising part is they only negotiated a 3% raise. I was expecting more along the lines of, 8-9%, something like that.
Well, it's an
3% raise.
It's an 11% raise over 3 years, 3%, 3%, 5%, right? So it's 11 over the 3-year term, but I can't remember the last time I got a 3% raise, let alone an 11% raise over 3 years. But okay, but this is one of the reasons why you were saying you were expecting like an 8%
you should talk to your boss about that.
I should. That guy's a jerk. You're talking about 8% raise over a single year is what you were expecting.
It was, because we'd had one of our bargaining units came back last year with a 14% raise in 1 year. So, I was expecting something closer to that. So yeah, 11% over 3 years compared to what we were expecting actually is not bad. But it's 3% for this first year. And so that's $35 million to add to next year's budget. And I don't remember offhand what the hit is the following year's budget, but we got the other piece that's going on there is it sounds like they're playing a little funny money with the fund sources. And so some of it's going to come from UGF state money. Some of it's going to come from federal funds. Some of it's going to come, a couple other, designated funds, different pieces there. And because, hey, we're desperate. And so they're pulling the change out of the couch cushions here. But yeah, the ultimate direction that we're going here, as I mentioned, the permanent fund is, or the dividend, I should say, not the permanent fund, is largely gone next year. Another question is what happens with the fund itself, with the ERA, because we're talking about the whole combining the funds bit, which I am not a fan of. I'm thinking about writing an op-ed maybe to come out over the summer or something to, kind of lay out all the reasons why this is a bad idea. I've got 6 or 7 of them. And this is, so what does that do? If the stock market tanks and the ERA is all of a sudden underwater next year or close to it, we can't, the draw is calculated on a lagging 5-year average. And so by July 1, we know what we're pulling out the following year. Well, August, once we, give the accountants time to finish their work.
Right.
But, we've known, we're pulling 3.8 billion out of the fund this year. We've known that number for a while now. That's not something that's going to change. But the one thing that could change it is if all of a sudden the stock market tanks and the ERA doesn't have that 3.8 billion in there. And what do we do about that? Well, we could go on a fire sale of some of our assets to get the cash out, or we could start having honest discussions around here about, size and scope of government and, prioritize, what government actually needs to be doing as opposed to what is just stuff that we want to do. The childcare thing has been coming up a lot the last couple of weeks, just as kind of one example.
Right.
And it's interesting. One of the questions you didn't play from the conference, and it was actually a question that got asked last week as well, is this the last year of the dividend? And everybody's saying, well, we don't want it to be. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you might not want it to be, but you're not doing things to ensure that it won't be.
Right.
Exactly. There's a difference between the statements that you're making and what you wish and the actions that you're taking. You're saying you don't want it to happen, but your actions are making it happen. There's a disconnect there.
Right. Well, there's a lot of that going on in that press conference. We'll get back to that here in a second. The question about, or Bert Stedman saying, well, what we need the governor to propose a better budget, which again, 2018, anybody? I mean, I'm asking for a friend. Isn't that what happened back in the we're going to continue here. Robb Myers is our guest. We will be back here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the commercial break with Rob right now. Doing it to it. I didn't hear them ask that question this week, Rob. And like I said, I've listened to this presser like 3 times already. They asked the question, but again, it's a fantastic question. And you could see some of that answer in what they were talking about, where Bertman said, well, I hope it's not, I hope it's not permanent. I hope we don't get beyond it. I hope we get back to the 75-25. Well, but again, you're the ones that are in control of this. You are the one. I hope we can get back to that. Again, it goes back to the whole Titanic thing. Well, we're trying to steer away from you guys, you had the warning. You had 5 years at least worth of warning. If not the klaxon call back in 2013 and 14, when you drew that first, several $billion chunk out of the CBR. It just seems like it's disingenuous in the long run. This idea that somehow they've just discovered that this is happening, right? That seems to be the shocked look on it. It's just like it wouldn't happen. Oh, this is really going on. I can't believe it.
We have such a disconnect around here, and I've talked about this before. Such a disconnect between our long-term plans and our short-term actions. And if you don't connect those two, these are the types of situations that you get into. We talk about, oh, this is what we could do over the next 10 years. Oh, this is what will be sustainable in the long run, but what do? We violate that every year. Take the SB 113 debate, for example. Okay. The new tax thing and new tax, old tax, whatever. when this bill hit the floor in the Senate about 3 weeks ago, one of the things was said was, oh, well, this is going to help us reduce the deficit. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, sure, okay. What happens? Within 2 weeks, it hasn't even passed the House yet, and we've already earmarked the spending for something else. We talk about this long-term stuff, but we don't take the actions that get us to that long-term. We take the short-term easy outs. And that's what we have always done in the legislature. You got a few folks around here that think long-term, but the majority of folks think short-term and just think about 1 year budget, 2 year election cycle. That's where we fall down around here. That is where our planning stops.
More. I want more. That's what they want. That's right. I mean, more. Bring it to me right now.
You're not wrong.
This is the thing. I mean, Harold in the chat room is always going on about, the oil taxes and how we've left money on the table and everything else. And in some ways, I agree. I mean, I agree with him. There's probably $400 or $500 million that could still be taxed out of the oil companies that is still available. But I'm kind of glad we didn't, because then they would have just spent it all, man. That's the thing. I mean, Natasha von Imhoff's comment in her last year in the legislature, when all of a sudden they had this huge windfall surplus because of oil prices. And she's like, we just have so much money, we don't know how to spend it all. Well, you're not supposed to spend it all. You're supposed. God help us.
So I actually had an amendment to deal with that year's budget. I had an amendment on the floor to deal with that. I said, okay, if we have more money than we know how to spend, let's save some of that. Let's eliminate the draw from the permanent fund besides the part that goes to the dividend. Because that was, at the time, I think something like 1.7 billion that would have gone straight to government for government to spend. Let's eliminate that so that we spend less and keep that in the fund and earn some more interest, etc. Okay. And what happened? It failed 7-13. So, you know what? If we have more money than we know what to do with, let's intentionally keep some in the piggy bank. And we can't even do that around here.
That's all I'm saying. More.
More.
All right. We're 20 seconds out here. We're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense. Dude, I don't even know what to say at this point. Common Sense, Liberty Based, Free Thinking Radio. Please like and share. If you haven't shared the show, if you haven't liked the show, there's like 80 people watching right now. Why haven't you liked it? I mean, don't you like me? Don't you like me, man? Help bolster my self-esteem. All right, let's go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. Robb Myers is our guest. Rob, one final bite at the apple on this employee thing. So this is just one unit, right? I mean, are there still other contracts that are out there? Do we have any idea of? I mean, again, the low estimates I was hearing was in the mid $100 million range for all the contracts. Do we have any idea of what all this is going to entail? Is there really a number? And again, the accounting, when I hear 150 and they say, oh, no, it's only 35 million. It's only 45 million. It's less than 50 million. I'm like, okay, how are you counting that? Are you only one hand? Are you, so what are the costs going to be on this? Do we know?
So when you say 150 million or 200 million, I believe that was over the 3-year term, because that's the standard bargaining time period around here. Is we write our contract for 3 years, and so the 35 million is a 1 year, whereas 150 to 200 million, that's the total 3-year cost. And then, as I mentioned right before we went to the break, there's also we're kind of shifting around some fund sources. We're using a little bit of federal money. We're using a little bit of designated funds. We're using a little bit of UGF. So the 35 million, that's the UGF, the undesignated general fund, the open to spend anywhere you want, basically. And that's the part where we have problems, is the UGF.
Right.
So,
but I guess to put it in perspective for people, though, too, this is this is perpetual. This is money that's on the books forever. So if it's $45 million one year, and maybe it's 50 the next year, maybe it's 55 the following year, because it's an ever increasing, right, based on increases and everything else. So if it's $150 million, but that's $150 million more in perpetuity, because they're not going to renegotiate a lower rate on the next contract, right? So it'll be $150 million over 3 years. And then on the third year, it'll get even bigger. So it's in perpetuity, and it's locked in. We're contractually obligated, which leads me back to the question.
That's correct.
Right. So it's even more money that's now can't be negotiated. It can't be discussed on the floor. It can't be amended. It's another $150 million over the next 3 years, at least, that will then just go up 3 years from now. So this leads me to my next question, which is on the education bill. You were the only senator that said no. And now, when it came back for reconsideration, because it had the constitutional issues, Shelley Hughes and Mike Shower joined you. But everybody else in the minority, the fiscally conservative Republican minority, said, oh, sure, 185 million, no big deal. Cool beans, go for it. And not just 185 million, but 185 million inside the formula, so that it's locked into place until the heat death of the universe, right? How much of this, when you voted for this, when you voted against it, rather, what was your reasoning? Did it have to do with that? Did it have to do with the funding of who pays, or how do we pay for it? Walk us through your rationalization here when you were the sole voice of reason on the floor in the Senate.
So this is going to sound a little strange, but when I voted no on that, the money really was not the primary issue on my mind, because here is what we have shown we're going to do. Whether it's inside the formula or outside the formula, we are still spending that money. In the budget right now is a placeholder of a $680 BSA boost that is going to be there unless we pass a BSA bill. And so with this one still up in the air, that money is still there. So it's 680 versus 700. So whether it's inside the formula or outside the formula, we're spending the money. And as you mentioned with the employee contracts, those numbers never go down. They don't go up as fast as some folks would like, but they never go down. Ever since this formula has been in place in 1998, we have never dropped on a per student basis. Again, we don't necessarily keep up with inflation. We don't necessarily go up as fast as some of the districts and some other folks would like, but it has never gone down. And that's including the total, including all the inside and outside the formula money. So we included 680 in the budget last year as one-time money. So we knew coming in this year that 680 was going to be there again. So the money in my mind was less a portion of it. What I was looking at was, we have agreed for years that the goal here is we're going to trade money inside the formula, trade the guaranteed funding the districts want for policy. And I have always said, I want to see policy that makes a difference for the majority of our kids. You know, like we talk about the charter school stuff. I am a firm believer in charter schools. 2 of my kids are at a charter school in North Pole. All right. But I also recognize charter schools are 4% of our kids in this state. If we can pass some of these charter school reforms, maybe we can open a few more. We can get that up to 6%. Great. But I'm all in favor of that kind of policy, but I need to see policy that's going to affect 60, 70% of the kids in our state for me to be okay with that. And what I saw come out of that bill, I know a lot of folks put a lot of work into trying to find a compromise, and I appreciate the work that was put into it. But for me personally, that balance wasn't there yet. And I said it on the floor, and I think I got quoted in one of the papers. The way that we are, kind of what is emblematic about the way that this went was the one piece of policy in that bill that I thought was really going to be a game changer for most of our kids was the reading grants, because you teach people to read, and that is a game changer for all of school. But what did we do? We put in a BSA boost, and we put in a transportation boost that are guaranteed, if in effect, as guaranteed as anything in our budget is guaranteed around here. But we took those reading grants and the extra CTE funding, and we made those contingent on a tax bill, which hadn't even finished passing yet. And I mean, you watch this process long enough to know that even when people are, mostly in agreement on something, it can still hit a snag somewhere and not pass. So I'm looking at that and saying, this is the policy statement that we as a legislature are making. We are saying we will guarantee that we will get your kids to school, but we will not guarantee that we're going to teach them to read. There's something wrong with that statement. So that's where it fell out for me, was I did not see enough policy in there that was going to affect our kids in a positive manner to balance out with the guaranteed money that we were promising. And I just couldn't get there. And the way that we were going about that with the contingency language and everything, and yeah, we ended up with a constitutional issue. And we had to go back and fix that. And once we fixed that, in some ways that kind of made it worse, because that made the funding even less guaranteed, because we said, okay, so whether or not the reading grants go into existence is based on that tax bill happening. But now we don't guarantee that the funding from that tax bill goes to those reading grants. Now it could be diverted elsewhere. So, this is the situation that we're in on that bill. And again, I appreciate the work that was put in by some of my caucus members, by some folks in the majority, to try to craft a compromise, but it just, I couldn't get there. It didn't pass a sniff test for me.
What do you think is going to happen as the governor looks at this? I mean, he hasn't done anything with it. He could veto it. As you said, there's already a $680 million or $680 contingency per student contingency in the budget. So if nothing passes, that part of the budget is still there, and the governor could. What do you think is going to happen? Do you have a prediction? And if he does veto it, I know Yunt and Kronk and Rauscher have said that are there enough votes in both bodies, do you think, to override it? What do you think happens?
So you've got three different pieces in play here, all of which are subject to final votes, veto override, vetoes, veto overrides. So you've got HB 57, the bill itself. That was transmitted to the governor, May 1st. So that's Thursday last week. So he's got a little over 2 weeks. He's got until something like the 18th or something to veto that, potentially. And then us potentially come back for a veto override. So that battle could happen before this year is out, which that could be interesting. That's an interesting wrinkle at the very end of session we haven't had before. And you've got the tax bill, which is on the floor of the House today. And they're going to vote on that. And, oh, by the way, we found out along the way that one of the things that they're doing in that tax bill with regard to banks is potentially opening us up for a lawsuit. But they have apparently decided that they're not going to fix it on the House floor. They're going to pass it as it is, and then we'll pass a fix next year. And I'm sitting here going, I don't necessarily trust that concept. If you don't fix it now, do we actually, because what the fix would do is get us away from the lawsuit, but it would actually mean less money. So are we actually going to pass a fix that gets us less money?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. So that if it goes on the House, it's going on the House floor today to be voted on. So that could get thrown. That'll get thrown to the governor here in a day or two. But the way the Constitution lays out the timeline, he could wait until the session is over and then veto it. And then the veto override potentially wouldn't happen until next year. And then finally, you've got another piece in there, which is even let's say that we do override the governor's veto on the on HB 57, which is entirely possible given what the votes on the floor were. He could then theoretically veto the money out just directly out of the budget. And then we could come back and have a veto override on that come the end of this or come next January. Now, the interesting thing is that for HB 57, the veto override threshold is 40. Okay. And I mean, it looks like we're there. You had 17 vote for it in the Senate. You had 31 vote for it in the House. So you're up to 48 already. And it's like, oh, okay, even if you lose a couple, they probably got the votes to override right there. You go the other two pieces of it, the tax bill and the money in the budget. Both of the thresholds for both of those to override a veto is 45. And you got to figure that on the tax bill, especially, that, some folks that, even wanted to get the education fix across the finish line are going to be a little more leery to vote for a tax bill, whether or not it's, tied to education funding or what have you. So, I don't expect the vote in the House to be that high. In the Senate, it was 16-4. We'll see if it's 6 that way, or if, a vote changes here or there, one way or the other. So there is a possibility that we could end up with HB 57 passing, and then the funding for both the BSA increase and the reading grants effectively gets vetoed, and we don't override. So it's going to be in a weird place until June 1, usually the budget vetoes happen a little later, but by mid to late June, we'll know where we stand.
Buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be an exciting end of session, I think, is what Rob is trying to tell us right now. All right, we're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. One final segment dead ahead, The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Robb Myers is our guest. Rob, this comment, though, which we hadn't got into, which was Senator Stedman basically saying, stop paying attention to this. What was it?
$700 million.
No, that wasn't it. I was going to play it again, but I don't. I have them marked, but not that finitely. Anyway,
The FY26 budget and the
oh, there we go, right there.
Headwinds that we're facing.
This is it. So this is the comment I wanted to get your thoughts.
Senator Stedman.
Well, the Senate President listed off of a series of headwinds that we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell too much into that arena.
I just don't want facing a bunch of headwinds we're facing. I just don't want the public to dwell in that arena.
We should be dwelling on that. That's kind of the point here. That's the problem, is that we don't dwell on those things. We need to.
Yeah. No, that's
we focus too short term around here.
That's the problem. The problem is that this is exactly what we're talking about. This is where we should be focusing on this, because this is the issue that we are facing. And it's almost like, again, that pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. What are you talking about? This is what we should be focusing on, instead of this short-term. It's like the short-term gains is what they're talking about. The short-term. Don't focus on the long term. Only focus on the short term. So stop looking at that. Look at this year only, and that's the problem. That we're trying to look at this year only, and that is a serious issue at this point.
Yeah, we've almost always looked at this year only, and that's why we're in this boat, because we don't think about what could happen, what needs to happen down the line. We don't think, what we have to do in the long run is you have to set your goal out long term and then work backwards. We don't do that. We're always looking at our feet. We're always looking at that one step ahead of us, and we're not raising our head high enough to look at, what's coming in front of us.
Yeah. And maybe that's not how he meant it. Maybe I'm taking it all out of context, but by golly, it sure does look like that. Like, don't look at what we're doing. Don't look at where we're going. And again, going back to the Titanic and the iceberg issue, we already hit the iceberg. That's the problem. We're trying to bail out the Titanic with a teacup. And that, instead of going to the lifeboats and they're like, don't worry, it'll be fine. We'll just keep doing this is for reals. They keep saying, we're just keep doing what we've been doing and it'll be fine. Now that we're aware of it, now we know, now we'll see it. We'll just keep doing what we've been doing though, and it'll be fine. Am I wrong? Is that not kind of the reaction that we just heard in this press conference?
I mean, I think that's it. We've come through this year, and we basically rejected all of the proposed increments, whether it was at least on the Senate side, whether it was proposed increments from the governor, whether it was proposed increments from the House, proposed increments from our own members in most ways. But the only place where we actually had an increase was education. Everything else is either flat or been cut slightly. But the crazy part is, that's a great attitude to have, but that's the attitude we should have had for the last 20 or 30 years. And so we're fighting not just, this year's increase, we are fighting the increases that we have been having for decades. And until we roll back some of that, we're just putting off the inevitable. We're still in the same world of hurt. We've talked a little bit about the permanent fund. We've talked, oil prices. Oil prices are about 65 right now. I expect they're going to stabilize, in the low 60s, 60, 61, 62 for the foreseeable future. That's another.
What's
that work out to? So something like that.
I'm sorry. That's just to say, if OPEC doesn't again increase their production next month, which is what they're talking about right now. I mean, Trump is pushing for oil to be in the 50s, the low 50s, and OPEC is trying to capitulate some of that.
So let me put a couple of clarifiers on there. So when Trump is talking about oil in the low to mid 50s, what he's talking about there is the WTI price. And the Alaska oil price tends to be $6, $7, $8 above the WTI, partly because our oil is a little bit higher quality, partly because our oil is internationally traded, whereas WTI is just domestically traded. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that once that oil hits that mid upper 50s range, that's when the frackers down south start to go out of business. And so OPEC can keep pumping because their costs are lower, but our own domestic production starts to go out of business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just expecting
that's kind of where your floor is.
I'm expecting oil to be sub 60 is what I'm saying. Now, maybe not all the way to 50, but sub 60 for sure. And that is going to spell some real problems, which we're going to get into now.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
That's right. Not your daddy. Nor do I play him on TV. Just saying. It is the Michael Duke Show. Welcome back to the program. Final segment here with Robb Myers. And I've been kind of driving the bus a little bit. So I'm just going to throw one last question out there. It's going to be more than one. But I'm going to throw one last question out there just to kind of steer the ship a little bit here. Robb, what do we need to do? How do we fix the fiscal situation in the state? If, Robb Myers was emperor of the world, how would you fix the problem? What do we need to do in your mind as we do this? Tell us, Sahib, how do we make this work?
Well, first of all, the world is not ready for me to be emperor.
That's true. Yeah. Unlimited power.
The world is not ready for me to be emperor. That's probably not. So there's a difference between what we need to do and what we're likely to do. And you and I've talked about this disconnect a lot over the years. Is what we need to do is, kind of take what we just did this year in the Senate and do it over again, and just deeper. Look at not only the increments that we rejected this year, but look at the increments that we included last year and reject those, and the increments before that and reject those, and start working our way backwards and go a little bit more towards zero-based budgeting and things like that. The problem is, that, as you and I have discussed, for a lot of things in state government, when you go to cut government, that means that you're cutting somebody's paycheck, in effect. And then I'm not just talking about government workers, and I'm not just talking about, like welfare recipients, but so much of our state's economy is based on government contracts, or in some other way being dependent on government action. Doctors and hospitals are dependent on Medicaid spending.
Well, it looks like
construction companies and construction workers that are dependent on our capital budget spending. And one of the things that we mentioned the federal government might be doing is they're potentially changing our match in our roads from 90-10, 90% federal, 10% state, to 80-20, 80% federal and 20% state. That's going to have a huge impact that we haven't even really started discussing around here. GCI with all the telecom grants and stuff, nonprofits with the different grants that we hand out. We've already cut back on a lot of those grants this year. And that's why we're getting so many emails about, hey, please restore funding for this, for the child care and so many other kinds of grants and stuff. Those are every time you start cutting those kinds of things, you have a segment of the Alaskan populace that says, hey, that's my paycheck. Not just, hey, you're hurting, people because you're not, you're hurting poor people because you're cutting Medicaid or something like that, but you're hurting my paycheck. And it's not necessarily even the supposed beneficiaries that are the ones that push back, because let's be honest, the folks on the lower end of the income scale tend to vote less and tend to be less informed when they do vote. The folks on the upper end of the income scale are the ones that are having their paychecks supported in that manner, do vote, and they do know what they're voting about. And so they tend to vote for folks that send more money in their direction. So there's a disconnect between what we need to do and what's likely to happen. And, that's why I'm looking at this and saying, after all of the changing of the players, to use your phrase, that we've had over the last 7, 8, 10 years, and we're still in this boat, is it likely to right the ship anytime soon? Probably not. Right. And that's why I'm saying, this is going to be a case of, we're not going to face reality until we hit rock bottom. And rock bottom could be one of two things. Either A, we completely run out of money, or B, we institute a broad-based tax, or maybe a combination of the two. Who knows? But that's the direction that we're heading. And that's the point at which I think everybody's going to wake up. Now, the question is, once we hit that rock bottom, do we have the ability to pull up out of the slide and right the ship and get ourselves moving in a good direction again? And how long is that going to take? Can we do that in 2 or 3 years? Is that a 10, 20, 30-year project? I don't know yet. We're probably not going to find that out until we get there.
And you bring up a valid point, and this has been more and more on our minds lately here on the program. And it's actually, we've been discussing it the last couple, 3, 4 months. People have been bringing this up, that maybe we should accelerate the crash so that there is actually resources left over so that we can rebuild. Because if we zero out the permanent fund and we zero out the SBR and we zero out the CBR, and we, in your definition of, hitting rock bottom, we basically drained every available source of funding, then when the crash does happen, there's nothing to build back from. But if we come to it now and accelerate it, and there is still money left over in some of those areas, what's your take on that? Do we just need to get it over with? Do we need to rip the Band-Aid off and just realize that we're busted and that we should be rebuilding? I mean, how would we even accomplish that at this point? Do we just agree to every bit of spending to let them hit the wall faster, or do we keep kicking and screaming all the way to the inevitable, inexorable doom of us all?
So I think that there's two pieces here. There's the money side, which is what we've been talking about the last few minutes. There's also an attitude side. And that's, I think, going to be the harder part to change, because we have been in this pattern for, call it 5 decades in this state, ever since oil, really became the monster player in our state and in our budget that it's been, where we have assumed, okay, government's going to have money. If we have a problem, let's go ask the government to fix it. And we have not assumed, oh, okay, well, we've got a problem and government might be a player in this, but it's going to fix it through policy, not through money. And that attitude, I think, is maybe even the deeper issue that we're going to have to fix here. Yeah, we're going to run out of money at some point in the relatively near future. And can we pull out of that? Maybe. That I don't know exactly how that's going to play out yet, but I think that's the deeper issue. Not only amongst our politicians, but also amongst the populace in general, is saying we have to change that attitude about what we do with our government and say policy needs to be the driver, not the money. Policy should drive the money. And what we've done is we've let the money drive the policy. And until we change that attitude, then I don't think that pulling out yet is going to be possible. And I think that is really the longer term problem, is changing that attitude, not just looking at how much money we have available.
With the players that we have right now, it's highly unlikely that attitude is going to change. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We've changed out a big chunk of the legislature over the last 8 years, as you pointed out. We've changed out a lot of the players, but there's people that have been there 25, 30, 40 years, and they're still driving the bus. And so because they have the helm, I just don't see this changing in any way. You mentioned zero-based budgeting. That would be one way to go, but is there any appetite for anywhere to change the way that we budget? That is one of the charter of changes, is changing the way we change the funding, change the way we budget. Is there any appetite for that?
The crazy part about that is Will Stapp actually ran an amendment on the floor on the House side to do zero-based budgeting for one department next year. And it just said, OMB, you pick a department and you do zero-based budgeting. Because, we recognize we're not going to do zero-based budgeting the entire, government right off the bat. We don't have the time. We don't have the energy to do that. But let's pick a department and start there. And then maybe we can expand that the following years. Actually passed. I think it was 26-14, something like that. So you even had some Democrats jumping on board there. So I think the appetite might be starting to get there. I think some folks are starting to realize the pickle that we're in. And, I'm going to see if we can get that passed on the Senate side as well. Let's see if we can get that to, since it passed on the House side, going to conference, there's a possibility it remains in there.
I'd love to see it. I mean, it would be a start, if nothing else. And with bipartisan support, maybe we could make it happen. State Senator Robb Myers has been our guest. Rob, thank you, as always, for standing strong. And thank you for coming on board and joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you for coming on today. All right.
Yeah, all right. Absolutely, Michael. Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, this is where you talk, Rob. All right, we're gonna be back tomorrow. We've got more of the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll actually pick up that press conference thing tomorrow. We're going to do some more of that. That was fun. We'll see you then. Okay, Rob, final bite at the apple. Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover? Anything else that you got going on? I lost your connection for just a minute there when you started talking about zero-based budgeting. That's why I wanted to go back to it, because that's an important part.
Okay.
But anything else that you want to cover or hit, or final thoughts, I guess, before we let you go?
Yeah, just to recap that in case you missed it. So the zero-based budgeting, Will Stapp actually got that put in on the House floor, and the vote was like 26-14 or something.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I meant earlier when you were talking about zero-based budgeting you mentioned it in passing, and then we lost you. I lost you for about 25 seconds, and then you came back. So, but anyway, yeah. Final thoughts on anything else?
Whirlwind show per usual, Michael. We covered a lot, and I can always talk more, but because I'm a politician, so that's what I'm paid to do, right? But even my daughter's laughing at that.
You're the trucker economist. That's what Harold said in the chat room. You're the trucker economist. So you know what? Why should we listen to you? You drive trucks. But again, you're one of the few legislators who's dived down deep into a lot of these things and educated yourself on everything from the command oil economy to more. But it's just good to see you stand on this. And I wish more people would stand with you on some of these issues.
Yeah. For me, so much of it boils down to, having that economy based on oil, and then again based on the permanent fund, encourages short-term thinking. It encourages higher spending, and it encourages that attitude that you were talking about in the first hour of the show, where the public economy says to the private economy, we actually don't want you unless you're contributing back to the state. We don't want private economic development because we get our money elsewhere, not from the private economy. And that's a dangerous place to be. And until we start changing that underlying structure so that those attitudes go away, so that we start wanting private economic development, we start wanting longer term planning that goes out 20, 30, 40 years, rather than just thinking about a 1-year budget cycle or a 2-year budget cycle. Until we fix those attitudes, we're going to be in this same situation, regardless of how much money we have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we can't, again, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Final thought, Chris says, Rob, your daughter is well behaved sitting there listening to you. Because otherwise, or else, that's why.
Well, I did tell her she could leave if she got bored, but apparently she's fascinated by this, which I am both impressed by and a little concerned at. So
you should be. Yeah, you should be a little concerned. Here's the PlayStation. You go do something fun, or whatever. Anyway, Rob, thank you so much for coming on.
She's actually got a touch of schoolwork to finish, and so maybe she's trying to avoid that. That might be part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it takes, man. Whatever it takes. All right, Robb Myers, thank you, my friend. It's good to talk with you. We will we'll talk to you again soon. Keep us in the loop if anything else happens. Between now and then, like you said, if the governor does veto or anything else happens, it's going to make for an exciting last. What are we? 13 days left. 13 days left of the search. That's it right now. So there you go.
14, yeah. So it's
121.
Yeah, we're done on the 21st. So 2 weeks.
14 days. All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you coming on board, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. You have a good one, Michael. We'll see you later.
Thanks so much. All right. Robb Myers, our guest here on the program today. I was going to do a little bit more of this press conference, but you know what? I think I'm going to hold it for tomorrow because that was so much fun. I was laughing, but I was crying inside at the same time. So it's a little bit of a dichotomy, it's a little, it is what it is, but, yeah, we're going to continue that press conference stuff tomorrow because their words say more than I ever could. Their words during these things show where their heart is at more than I ever could. And I love that. I think it's been fantastic. So we're going to continue on with this tomorrow. I hope you tune in. I hope you enjoyed this morning's show. I hope you enjoyed, obviously, Robb Myers, but I hope you enjoyed the first hour as well. So we'll be back, the Michael Duke Show. Don't forget to check out the Common Sense Corps. You know that, Common Sense Corps. If you want to help support the show, that's how you do it there. Patreon.com/Michael Duke Show. Until then, we will see you tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.